Here we're going to tie the articulated Gonga streamer. First thing we're going to do is we're going to tie the back section of the fly first. So I'm just going to get my thread started here and just lay down just a loose thread base. I'll take my thread forward again. Then we're going to get our marabou ready here. We're going to use one plume of brown woolly bugger marabou. Then we'll use one plume of a rust or a burnt orange. Either one works just fine, of woolly bugger marabou as well. And we'll make these so that they match up. The tips are perfectly even. And we'll draw them both together. We want to measure out a plume that's about half the length of the shank of the hook, so I just kind of roughly eyeball it, place it onto the shank of the hook, do a nice loose wrap to capture it, and then I'm going to wrap back on this marabou, drawing the marabou up off the shank of the hook. You can trim the front ends out of there if they're getting in the way. Take it all the way to the bend. Then you can lock down the entire plume here. Trim any of the fuzzy leftovers. Then we're going to take our thread to the back again here. And we're ready to tie in our hackle, which is just going to be a fiery brown schlappen feather. Just pluck one from the patch here. We're going to tie this feather in here by the tip of it. So what I'm going to do is just take that schlappen feather, hold the tip, and just slide all the fibers back. Then we can tie it in by that tip, just like so. Lock it all down. Now we're ready to dub the body. You can either use a dubbing loop or do it by hand. I'm actually going to use a dubbing loop. It's just a little quicker and easier for me to deal with. We're going to use some golden brown dubbing. You can also use just rusty dubbing or brown dubbing. I like the golden brown because it has a little bit of flash to it. We're going to take a generous amount here and just spread it out on our dubbing loop. Trying to make it as evenly spread as possible. And spin it up. Once you've got it all spun, take it off your tool and just start building a body with it. Then we're ready to palmer this piece of schlappen forward. What I'm going to do is just gently coax and kind of stroke these fibers rearward. Just kind of gently stroke all those fibers rearward. And finish off the head. Whip finish. We essentially have the back half of the fly finished. So now we'll just lay that aside for now. And we'll get our next hook out, same size. And we'll start our thread up here by the eye. Actually invert my hook at this point and tie in a pair of large red painted lead eyes. And I left about 2 hook eye lengths of space from the hook eye. All I'm doing is just kind of figure Xing around those eyes to make sure they're nice and secure. And I'll take my thread back with some nice loose wraps and take it forward again. You turn your hook back up. Now the next thing to do is to take some thin intruder wire. You can use whatever color you please. I'm going to use black, but it doesn't really matter too much what the color is. Tie that in with some nice tight wraps. And we're going to take 3 large red glass beads, slide those onto the hook. Then we'll take our second hook here, go up through the eye, and then go through these large glass beads again. Be careful not to hook yourself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to close this loop almost all the way. You can see there I've left a little bit of room. I'm going to pinch that off right there and capture that intruder wire. Now at this point you have to be very careful that you do not hook yourself with this second hook. I've done it many times. It's easy to do. You just got to be conscious of it and know that it's back there. Then you'll just capture this second piece of wire. I usually double it over just to make sure that it's nice and secure. And you can trim it out of there with the back end of your scissors. And just try to get that fly to sit, or the second fly there, just sit in place. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take that same marabou, piece of burnt orange marabou and brown marabou. We're going to tie in a tail, just like we did on the back half of the fly. And just kind of roughly measure out a tail here. And we want it to reach back about 1/2 inch past the second eye of the fly there. And again, I'm being as careful as I can not to hook myself. Kind of work that marabou around that wire and that bead. Then we'll tie in our schlappen again. Same color. And that brown. Prepare it the same way, tying it in by the tip. Make your dubbing loop. Use that same color dubbing. And drop my dubbing loop here. Put it back in. Once you've got all your dubbing in place, spin it all up. Then we can take our schlappen feather here again, repeat that same process. Now we can tie in the top half of the fly. We're going to use some pseudo hair in either a tan or a brown. I am going to use a tan here, and then I'm going to marker it up. And we're going to tie this piece of pseudo hair in. We want it to reach back to the second hook there. And we can trim out the excess. Now we're going to tie in some legs. I'm going to use some barred and speckled crazy legs. I'm going to take 3 off of the skirt here. And you can use a brown or an orange or a pumpkin. This color I have here is a pumpkin color. We're going to tie the middle portion of the legs just on each side of the hook. I just capture them right in the middle of the clump, and I pull the other portion of the clump to the other side. And you want to trim these so that they're about the length of that piece of pseudo marabou or pseudo hair that we just tied in. Now what we're going to do is make another dubbing loop. We're going to take our thread all the way up to the eye of the fly. We're going to take some more of this pseudo hair, same color. We're going to cut out some chunks of it, and we're going to make it so that the pseudo hair is about 1 inch in length here. I'm just going to cut little inch-long sections and just set them aside. I'm going to do this a few times here. Have a dubbing loop ready to go. And it usually takes 4 or 5 of these little sections to get it all done. We'll do 4 here, hopefully that'll be enough. And what we're going to do is we're going to take these sections and we're going to put them into our dubbing loop. We're going to try to spread them out a little bit. We don't want it to be too dense. Right in the middle of each of these clumps. And I'm going to take that pseudo hair, just build up a little head with it. Stroke the fibers back with each wrap. And you can capture it once you're finished. Trim out the excess. Pull back all those fibers. Get some wraps right up in the front. Then we can whip finish. Now we can trim this head. All I want is kind of a little cone-shaped head. If you want to, you can brush it a little bit. Help get some of those trapped fibers to stand up. There we go. And we'll give it one last little brush just to get them to stand up a little more. Essentially, you have a finished Gonga articulated Gonga streamer, and what you can do to finish it is give the craft fur here, or the pseudo hair, a little bit of barring. You can also kind of color up the front part of the head if you want. Give it kind of a sculpin look to it. But essentially that's the articulated Gonga. Great fall brown trout streamer fly. You can get all the materials for this fly at intheriffle.com.